So we're getting some fresh data in on how Vice President Kamala Harris, her entrance as the expected Democratic nominee for president, is changing potentially the turnout math this election. CNN's Harry Enten has much more on this. 2020, Harry, saw record turnout.
Yes.
What are you looking at in terms of what this election could look like?
Yeah, so, if we were to go back, and I want to sort of create a timeline here to give you an understanding of just how much the entrance of Kamala Harris into this race, as well as the post-RNC bump for Donald Trump, has changed the potential turnout math. We were looking at a potentially much lower turnout this go-around in 2024 than 2020. So this is almost certain to vote in the election. You look post-debate 2024, look at that. It was just 55% of registered voters. That was actually the same as it was pre-debate, 55%. It was significantly lower than it was in 2020 during the summer when it was 60%. But look at where we are now. We are now at 62% after the RNC, after Kamala Harris gets into this race, and that is actually a higher number than what we saw during the summer of 2020 when it was 60%. So at this particular point, as we look at the math right now, if we are trusting what voters are saying, it's actually possible we'll see higher turnout than what we saw in 2020, which is what you pointed out was record turnout. So quite the shift here. It's not just enthusiasm. It's actually people saying that they're going to go out and almost certainly vote.
If you believe what voters are saying with that gap.
If we don't, then this is all not going to work.
Well, it's all funny money anyway.
Yeah.
Why?
Why is it? Well, throughout this entire cycle, we've been pointing out that there were a ton of voters who disliked both Biden and Donald Trump. So pre-RNC, right? 20% in the New York Times polling, 20% in Ipsos polling. Look at where we are today. Look how dramatically these numbers have dropped. Look at this. New York Times down to 8% who say they dislike Harris and Trump. How about Ipsos? The same pattern, 7%. This is very different now than what we saw prior. It looks a lot more like 2020 when it was just 3% who disliked both major party candidates, and very much unlike what we saw in 2016 when it was 18% in the exit polls, which looked a lot more like what we saw earlier in the year. So the fact is, voters are much more apt to at least like one of the candidates, and I think that's part of the reason why voters are much more likely to turn out, because if you dislike both major party candidates, why actually turn out and vote?
But that was what RFK Jr. was counting on. I guess, on some level.
That was what he was counting on. In fact, that was his core group of voters, right? Those who dislike both Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So what's happened to him now? Look at this. He was at 15% in December. He was at 10% post-debate. He has dropped all the way down to 5%. The fact that Harris
and he is not happy with it.
He is not happy about it. He is not happy about it. The fact that the voters actually do like one of the major party candidates really is devastating to his campaign. He might not even reach 5%. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up with 2 or 3%. Not exactly a strong showing for someone who entered the race with some possibilities.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. John?
All right, with us now is Congressman Mike Quigley, a Democrat from Illinois. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us. You spoke in your mind quite a bit the last month or so, and at times, I think, received a lot of heat for it, but I'm going to count on you to speak your mind again this morning, because most people we ask about who Vice President Kamala Harris should pick as a running mate, they say, oh, she'll make the right choice. Whoever she picks will be great. We have such a deep bench. You, though, I've been reading this morning, have suggested you maybe think Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania would be the best pick. Why?
No, well, let me say, I violate my own rule of speculation and such things. I'm for the home court bench, J.B. Pritzker, just because he led Illinois through such difficult times, and he really knows how to campaign. I speculated that if that wasn't the case and they were going to pick someone from a swing state, Pennsylvania is the one state you absolutely need to win in Democratic math. But I'm going to stay with my friend J.B. Pritzker.
You have maintained your membership card as a Chicagoan. That aside, though, because Pritzker doesn't appear to be on the shortest of short lists here, but that aside, you say Pennsylvania is essential. Why? And what would Shapiro do for you there?
He's popular east to west, and I think that's absolutely critical. I will say it's early, and we give way too much credence to who the vice presidential nominee is. I think they can do more harm than good. And frankly speaking, on the Republican side, I think their choice has borne out to be a big mistake. The fact that Trump has to defend him on a regular basis means that there's a problem. He's underwater on polling. He's got extreme values and statements on things like choice and climate change. So, if Trump was the smartest candidate, he would have picked someone to appeal to that middle. Just put it in context. Let's remember it's early. Trump won by 3 states, the total of 78,000 votes in 2016. In 2020, President Biden won in 3 states by less than 50,000 votes. These swing voters, these persuadable voters, I don't think we're going to change their minds till after November. After Labor Day.
Yeah, you can't. After November is probably too late, but after Labor Day, I get what you're saying right there.
Right.
Congressman, you were one of the first and loudest sitting members of Congress to call on President Biden to exit the race, criticized by some senior Democrats for that. Now that it's happened, how do you feel? How surprised are you by how things have unfolded? And I do sense, I don't know, trepidation or a sort of a sense of being measured and cautious now from you.
No, I'll say this, relieved beyond comprehension. Was a very difficult decision politically from even an emotional point of view, because I respect President Biden so much. And as always, he put the country first and made the right decision. And the fact is, I was being told that this would create chaos and would have absurd notions of a 1968 convention in Chicago, an open convention. That hasn't happened. The vice president had several tasks, which I think she carried out: unite the party, ignite the base, reverse the polling. $200 million in the first week, 58,000 new volunteers in the first 24 hours. And they're seeing the polling trends go in the opposite direction. So, mission accomplished. I'm relieved. Now the work begins.
So obviously, foreign policy will be an issue in this campaign. And former President Trump, in an interview with Fox, was attacking the vice president with comments that I think there were people, they found them offensive. Listen to what he said.
They look at her and they say, we can't believe we got so lucky. They're going to walk all over her. And I don't want to say as to why, but a lot of people understand it.
So he was saying that foreign leaders are going to think they could walk all over her. I don't want to say why, but people understand it. What do you think he means by that?
Yeah, the dog whistles and code words and phrases are out in full force. It took from what's been reported, a lecture in the Republican caucus to tell people to stop talking about race and gender so much to their members. But you can't hold back Trump on such things. The fact of the matter is, foreign leaders are looking at this race, and they're seeing that our voters have a clear choice, and the fate of democracy, it's not hyperbole, in our country and for the rest of the world, many of them feel is hanging on this race. Where's NATO going? Keyed on what we do in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. So this is the race of our lifetime on national and foreign policy. I think Trump is right. Foreign leaders are looking at this, but I think they're looking at the opposite direction. They see a strong leader, the vice president, who's reaffirmed her support for NATO and Ukraine and Israel, with all the concerns that go with that. And they see him as sort of extremist and not going to be concerned with anybody outside our own country.
Congressman Mike Quigley, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Always appreciate talking to you.